on your end, the agent's end, making those phone calls through whatever system, either their phone here or a platform like Ring Central or whatever, based on certain algorithms, the agent doesn't, it seems like the lead is never picking up. So it just rings and rings and rings, rings and rings and rings, and nothing happens. So, but what happens on the lead side, the FISBO, the expired, whatever, is it doesn't even ring.
All right, folks, we are back here in the group, loving it. And we've got a great session for you guys today because, hey, we heard you. We understand this is a concern. People are concerned. When anyone in this group doing outbound prospecting, doing cold calling, you know what I'm talking about. And that is, how can we talk to more people every single day? With the way technology is working, with the limitations of a lot of these tools, it's getting harder and harder to do outbound prospecting year after year, right? So unless you're adapting and being smart with the technology. So today we have a special guest. We've got Gary from Prospect Boss jumping in with us, telling us kind of a really awesome solution they found to this problem. I've worked with Gary for a while now. We have a lot of clients on Prospect Boss, and they're loving the experience, right? They're having a really good time with the platform. And probably the number one reason is they tend to do a really good job maximizing that contact rate. So without further ado, Gary Prado of Prospect Boss. Welcome, man.
Yeah, well, thanks, Gustavo. Prado, I've heard of both, so it doesn't really matter. But thank you for having me on your show. We really appreciate it. We've been working with you, and we really love that relationship with you guys. You guys have an awesome platform. You guys have an awesome, the VAs calling and engaging the leads and all that stuff. So we've been sending a ton of business over to you. We just talked about somebody just a couple seconds ago. So the relationship is working incredibly well. So at Prospect Boss, the FTC came out with a bunch of stuff. You guys have probably heard about that. And back in 2020, I'll give you the history of what happened.
Tell people what's Prospect Boss. There's people here, I'm sure, have not even heard of the tool before, so they might not even know what we're talking about. So let's take a step back, Gary. Like, what is Prospect Boss, and how did you guys take that, incoming regulation and really nail it? Give us the wide end.
Sure. So Prospect Boss is an all-in-one lead engagement platform. So every day when an agent wakes up, they have their FISBOs, their expireds in the system. They have the FRBOs. You can do circle prospecting as well in the system. So every day the agent wakes up, they have their FISBOs and expireds in their area for them. So the agent can engage those leads right then. So you can engage them a lot of different ways. So, there's competitors out there that just do phone calls. We do things a little differently. We're a multi-channel solution, so you can engage leads via phone calls. We talked about that technology where calls are going through a lot more with Prospect Boss, and I'll get into that in a second. But with Prospect Boss, you can engage leads via phone calls. It's an incredibly good solution to get leads on the phone. And we'll talk about that in a second. You can also engage leads via SMS, video text, email marketing, RVMs, and so forth. So it's a multi-channel solution where you can engage leads a lot of different ways. And you can even set up automations for all of that stuff. So you can automate that whole process when those leads come in or those FISBOs and expireds come in. So that's what we do. We're an engagement platform. We're also a data and lead resource company. And so we sell the FISBOs, expireds, FRBOs. We even have specialty data like investors. If you're holding or if you're flipping, we have those leads available. We have likely to sell, divorced homeowners, things like that. So we do that specialty data as well. All that comes inside of Prospect Boss, and then you can engage those leads that way. So that's what we do in a nutshell. We're a lead engagement platform for the real estate agent. Now,
I love it.
Back to your point, as far as getting into what people are having problems with right now is something called stir shaken and spam likely. Probably one of those terms you've heard of, one of those terms you haven't.
Yes,
Stir shaken,
for sure.
stir shaken is not a James Bond movie. It's not a drink. It is something that is hurting people making sales calls right now. And so what Stir Shaken is it was developed back in 2020, 2021. And what the FTC decided is that if people are making a lot of calls going to phone numbers, they're going to block or limit those calls. Now, on your end, the agent's end, making those phone calls through whatever system, either their phone here or a platform like Ring Central or whatever, based on certain algorithms, the agent doesn't, it seems like the lead is never picking up. So it just rings and rings and rings, rings and rings and rings, and nothing happens. So, but what happens on the lead side, the FISBO, the expired, whatever, is it doesn't even ring. So based on certain algorithms, such as number of calls per hour, short-term duration phone calls, drop phone calls, and then the biggie is called attestation. So attestation is a grade. And so whenever I say a grade, and this is where it gets a little tricky, and I want to try to simplify the terminology. Every phone call that you make gets a grade. It's either A, B, C, or D. Now, if you're using your phone, this number, and you're calling a lot of phone calls, your grade could lower. Or if you're purchasing a phone number and you're just pasting that caller ID on a system, you're going to get a B or C grade right then. What it has to do with is the attestation grade that you're getting for your carrier. Now, at Prospect Boss, we get an A attestation with every phone call that or every phone number we sell and every phone call that goes out for our clients, because we've been in business 12 years. And our carriers are the same people that we purchase our numbers from. If you purchase a number from a different carrier and you're putting that telephony on a different traffic source, you're going to get a B or C grade attestation. And then what that means is that your calls aren't going to go through. So an A attestation plus the algorithms stop those calls from going through to leads. I know it's a little confusing, but if you guys have questions, I know we're going to talk about my contact. If you guys have questions that you want to get asked or answered, then you can just feel free to reach out to me. But that's what's happening in the world right now as far as Stir Shaken is concerned.
I got you. And Gary, and there's a lot of golden nuggets in there, right? It's a lot of great stuff you're mentioning. Let's drill a little bit down into that, because I'm sure folks in the audience, are going to have these questions. So there's several factors, right? There's some kind of an algorithm. We know this, and sometimes people run afoul of this within like an hour. Or what's really common, as soon as it starts calling, their number's already tagged as a spam likely, right? So from call number one, which makes sense of what you're saying. Like if you run into a situation where you're breaking these rules inadvertently, you have no idea you're doing it. From call number one, you're already messed up. You're not going to recover from that. It's only going to be from there, kind of all the way down, which is a really common scenario people run into. Like from call number one, they're tagged as spam, and they're just never going to get anywhere. And I've seen contact rates which for outbound prospecting should be like in the 5 to 10% range, is pretty good. I've seen them in the 1% range and the 0.5% range, because what you're describing is happening. And only the brave souls that want to know who the spammer is, right, are picking up. It's really just that. And everyone else is either not even seeing the phone call come through, or they're just ignoring it because it says, it's saying, telling you spam likely. So in addition to the attestation, does Prospect Boss help manage the other factors, some of the other factors of, making sure those phone calls, you don't do 800 phone calls from a single number in the 24-hour period? Does it manage every aspect of the that we know of the algorithm, or does it just focus on the attestation?
So at Prospect Boss, I'm going to talk about spam likely next, but what we do at Prospect Boss is you purchase numbers from us, and we keep you with those numbers. We rotate them and keep you below the Stir Shaken radar. So what that does is it rotates the numbers however many certain phone calls, and I can't remember the number, it's like 30 something. So we're well below the radar, and you're way down here. The radar is up here. That's the catch point with some certain algorithms. We're down here. So we're running below the radar, and that disguises stir shaken and keeps you being able to have your calls answered. So that's what our fix and so whatever, we rotate those numbers every month just to make sure. So you'll get a new Prospect Boss phone number every month. And that way you're always having your calls answered. Now, spam likely is a totally different thing. I don't answer those phone calls. I'm sure you don't either. But spam likely is based off of third-party apps like Truecaller, Umail. Apple has one built in. And so there's nothing anybody can do about spam likely. I can't control that. We have some best practices to get around it at Prospect Boss, but people, when they mark you as spam likely, it is what it is. So the number one point from today, I just want to make sure that everybody knows, never use your cell phone or office line as a prospecting line, because it is going to be marked as spam or blocked as stir shaken. Use third-party people like us, because we're going to keep you below the radar. Now, spam likely, what we do is we can remove the spam likely designation at Prospect Boss. So we can remove that. We have our techniques that we do to remove spam likely. Now, what our tests have shown is that nobody ever answers a spam likely phone call. Nobody. So if your call is marked by spam likely, you're already behind the 8 ball, and your pickup rates are going to drop even more than normal. So what we do is we filter and scrub our numbers, and so to make sure that spam likely is not on those numbers, and we check every month. If they are, we replace it again for free. So you're always running non-spam likely phone numbers. So think about it. No stir shaken, you're below the radar. And then also no spam likely phone calls. Now, what are your chances of somebody picking up now? Incredibly high.
Much higher. And I'm glad for drawing that distinction, because you're right. So stir shakings, make sure I understand, is a carrier algorithm. It's by the actual cell phone carriers, telco carriers. And spam likely can be an app, can be the iOS, can be Android, it can be, it's completely detached. It can be multi-carrier, which is why actually this makes a lot of sense, because one of our clients that had a lot of success trying to deal with this had to, every morning, he had, as I say, call people with two different carriers, and he'd call people with two different phone systems, right? An iOS and an Android, and an AT&T and a Verizon, right? He'd have to do 4 checks every morning just to make sure it wasn't tagged somehow. It was showing up on the other end, one single number. So you're saying with Prospect Boss, you guys do that like on a monthly basis, did not have to constantly be chasing that connection matrix.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And with spam likely, in my mind, I think all spam likely bad. Every other number I get good. In my mind, it's kind of like a filtering process. So when I get a phone call, it says spam likely. Oh, that's a scammer. I'm not going to answer it. But in my mind, and think about this, you might do the same thing. Every other number, I'm thinking not spam likely, business opportunity, answer. And that's what I do. So what we have seen is that it's crucial to make sure that your calls aren't being run or marked as spam likely, or use a system that will monitor that, and you can get new phone numbers all the time. And for God's sakes, don't use your landline or your cell phone number for calling phone calls, because you're just going to get marked, and then that number is bad for such a long time.
Yeah, definitely. It can really, really, really hurt
6
you.
months, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not a fun situation to be in. And I remember, we actually just recently stopped recommending a vendor, Ring Central, because the number that issue got so bad with Ring Central, when their tech support would call you, Gary, it showed up as spam likely. Like their own tech people had the issue. I don't know if they didn't notice, or they probably just didn't care. That every single number they had was at this point, tagged as spam likely, and quite frankly, just didn't care about that. So and I've worked with racing for many, many, many years. This year, I'm actually last year, 2023, is the first time I said, you know what, I'm not recommending them anymore. Not for real estate, right? And this is for even simple calls. We're not even talking about outbound prospecting for like inbound leads or anything else. It was the exact same issue, and even their tech support people had the issue. So how could you possibly, they just did not have it on the radar. Wasn't a priority for them, couldn't care less about that showing up because I don't know, they're Ring Central, right? So I mean, I love talking to people that actually care about the issue, right? Understand the issue, have the technical depth, and knowledge. Gary, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions or mistakes? You already mentioned one, using your personal line to make some of these calls and call people back. That's definitely a mistake because you're in the you got to get into a mindset that you've got to be able to recycle these numbers or go through them. That just rotate them. It's part of the mitigation. It's a mitigation factor. It's a cat and mouse game, like they say, right? It's a cat and mouse game. We're always trying to chase each other. That's normal. What other mistakes do people make? What misconceptions do people have about how these anti-spam measures work?
Well, one of the big things is that we see is we have to educate people is that people are saying that calling FISBOs and expireds don't work anymore, um, because
Big one.
because people aren't answering. But that's not the problem. So calling FISBOs and expireds or circle prospecting, promoting your just listed, just solds, whatever it may be, they work incredibly well. You're going to talk to people using the right solution. So the biggest misconception is that calling leads or engaging leads doesn't work anymore because of the new FTC rules and because of spam likely. That stuff doesn't work anymore. And that's probably the biggest misconception. We've had clients come to us who were with other competitors that we're not going to name that said, hey, listen, nobody answered my phone call. And I just want, and we would, how, this is how we sell it. We're going to give you 10 days of FISBOs and expireds and FRBOs and circle prospecting. If you don't have success, then you don't have to continue. It's a free 10-day trial. But if you do have success, sign up with us. So for us, it's the proof is in the pudding. We make that free trial. There's no risk or obligation. And so what they've come back to us and said, not only are so many more people answering, they're having so much more success calling FISBOs, expires, or engaging them, FISBOs, expires, FRBOs, whatever. And so what they have done is told their teammates about us, about Prospect Boss, and how they get calls to go through. So when you asked about the biggest misconception, I would have to say that that's it, because people think it doesn't work anymore, but it does. You're just doing it wrong. The game has changed, Gustavo. The game has changed. And you can't do what you did before. You have to do it differently. And so that's the biggest misconception, I think.
Yeah, I know, I know, and I've seen it. I've seen the industry change. So we started Power ISA back in end of 2015, right? So we could talk to 100, 200 people a day without taking any measures whatsoever. Like we just didn't care, right? We could make the call, boom, 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 effortless. At least from nowadays, it felt effortless, right? So that was, we could do it. We can't do that anymore. Like that model of doing things, that way of doing things, if you don't adapt and don't change, you'll talk to within a few days, you'll talk to 0 people a day if you try and do that right nowadays, right? Just plow through, a brute force trying to reach people. It doesn't work anymore, and I understand why. I love the saying. I think this comes from Deming. Adaptation is optional, survival is not mandatory, right? Adaptation is optional. So this is like a great way to do it. And I love that offer, Gary. Try it out for 10 days. And by the way, I'm dropping my link here in the comments. So, if you want to check it out, use my link, right? Use my affiliate link. You heard about Gary through me. So you guys owe me, right? So drop it here in the link, check it out, try out a Prospect Boss. Another thing, Gary, this is, I really noticed this as we started working together more closely. It's really reasonably priced for the value that it provides. Because there's other competitors out there, like you said, we won't name them. They're the gorillas in the room. That, oh my God, right? The expense is up there. It's pricey. It's pricey, and you combine high price with lowering effectiveness, it's ripe for disruption, right? That's what they say in the business parlance. Like, man, someone can really come in here and disrupt things and grab some market share. And right now, I see you guys as that. Like, holy cow! Like, it's a lot. It's a ton of value. Ton of value. I think for the price people pay, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're right around 150 bucks a month. We're not, um, without mentioning competitors, you don't have to drink the coffee or the espresso
Mhm.
and you don't need to have any Star Trek type of um, um, credentials to work with us. So there we go. We're not $300 or $400 a month. We're 100, right around 150 bucks a month, and we think
That's
it's
what
really
they're
good
at.
value.
That
Yes.
that's what the which is again brand is powerful. I get that, but at some point, where's the beef, right? So I think, when people ask that question, it's going to be harder and harder for people to say, well, you know what? Yeah, I think it's worth it. Is it though? Like, is it though? So another aspect, Gary, let's switch gears a little bit to the data, because you guys are like an all-in-one. You've got the CRM, you've got the data, you've got the data. It's an all-in-one lead, communication platform. Tell me more about the data you guys have got. Because one of the big selling points of some of these competitors are that they have the best data. Their data might suck, but the data is so awesome, that it's worth the expense. What do you think about that? What sets your data apart? What is it? Is it as good enough? Is there some aspect? Is there one kind of list where you guys think you're best in class? Tell me about that.
Yeah, and you were reading my mind, by the way. So that's what I was getting ready to go next. Is let me just say this: that it doesn't matter how good the data is, because if the calls don't go through, it doesn't matter, right? So it doesn't matter. So you have to make sure your solution, number one, is spot on. You can't have a solution that really doesn't know the market and know ways to get around stir shaken and spam likely, because the first thing that I would do is, if you're going to look at a competitor, how do you handle stir shaken? How do you handle spam likely? Because I want to know that, because if I'm an agent, because it doesn't matter if anything else, the data is what it is. It's a moot point. So that's number one, is that the solution has to come first, and you have to have um, um, options to handle stir shaken and spam likely, and they have to be very good and they have to work. So that's number one. That our data is, I've heard good things about other competitors' data, and our data is up there with that. I think they just have brand recognition. They've been in the market, but we provide the FISBOs, expireds, all their contact information, 5 points of contact. So we're going to provide 5 phone numbers with that contact. And the top ones are the highest ranked, so like an 80% score, whatever. And then also multiple email addresses where you can engage those leads inside the system. So with us, you can call them, you can send them a text message, and send them an email with all one click. And so you can just go through your calling list, click, and you're engaging tons of leads very quickly on multiple channels, and you can't do that with other solutions. But our data is very good, in my opinion. We've tested it with other carriers. I'm sorry, with other companies, and it's incredibly well. We have a lot of clients using it.
I love it. And you guys cover all the bases of expired for sale by owner, for rent by
Yep.
owner, and even Circle, which is it's always tough to find a decent a Circle prospecting provider that does take care of their data. There's a lot of data providers out there for Circle that offer like very very cheap data, like
Yeah.
I think one of them offers the whole state for like a few $100. I'm like, well, that the likelihood that that data is any kind of quality is just very low, like or zero. It's like that
Yeah.
you're gonna get your money's worth on just buying bulk data, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of numbers for a couple $100. It doesn't happen, right? That's just not a real scenario. So I would have put that out there. So I'm glad you guys focus on that. You guys take care of that. We're winding down here, Gary. But one question: I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's some new regulation around SMS campaigns. You guys are a multi-channel platform.
Yep.
How, if anything, have you guys done to adapt to the new like SMS? If I recall correctly, it's the A2P10DLC. I think I got that right.
Yep.
A2P10DLC. regulation on SMS. For the people that are not familiar with that, one, you don't know how lucky you are to not be familiar with that because that's not a happy place to be. Now, any like automated SMS campaign in the U.S., continental U.S., not continental, the whole U.S. Has to go through like an approval process, has to be approved. Your messages have to stay within certain guidelines like keywords and links, and those are going to be a no-no now. So SMS marketing now from when it was 6 months ago, my opinion, completely different game. What have you guys seen? How have you adapted? Because you've done a really good job adapting to these new regulations, the new hurdles. What have you done on the SMS side, Gary?
Yeah, so a couple things. What happened is most people might know what Twilio is, and that's the major SMS provider. They got in a lawsuit with Realty, and there was some things about SMS engaging those people, whatever. So Twilio really got knocked heavily by the FTC, and they really Twilio really started enforcing their 10 DLCs. There are some other carriers that are less stringent. What we do as a company is we run our telephony on a certain carrier for stir shaken, and then we run our SMS on a different carrier, a whole different network for 10 DLC. And the reason we do that is because, number one, if you try to get approved for 10 DLC, it's impossible. And it's really hard to get approved for it, and it takes forever. So you're waiting months and months to get approved. We're approved at day one for our 10 DLC, and so you'll be running SMS campaigns right then from day one. Now, we do have to tell you that you have to follow the laws. You have to make sure that they have the right to opt in. All that information is put on the form, but for our carriers for SMS, we went with that carrier because they were getting people approved through the 10 DLC forms quickly. So that's why. That's why we went with that carrier. But once again, you do have to follow the guidelines, the 10 DLC guidelines, and you need to have opt-ins. On your marketing, you need to have opt-ins on your website. It's okay to send SMS marketing. By all means, do that, but and follow those guidelines. But you need to go with a carrier like Prospect Boss that's actually going to get you approved for the 10 DLC, and that's what we do.
Yeah, for the people that don't know, or maybe you do know, it can take weeks to get approved, and we've had the experience, that we've seen campaigns just never get approved. Yes. They just get tired of resubmitting the same information over and over again. They just, let's just do calls. Not do SMS. People have gone to those lengths. And that wasn't the thing before, right? It's a very recent development. That's great. You guys do that. And Gary, since you have different carriers, I'm assuming it'll be different numbers, right? You're calling with one number, you're texting with another number. That's how we see it on the user perspective, right?
That's absolutely right. Now, the way you see it is inside of Prospect Boss, the UI, you have your telephony numbers and they're all listed there. Then you have your SMS numbers and they're listed there. So they're on entirely different carriers. I can tell you this: we've never had anybody decline for a 10 DLC form. I'll tell you that, just to let you know.
Wow. So that's impressive in and of itself. Because I've seen people really just struggle with Twilio and other carriers like that. So yeah, it's very, very challenging. So Gary, thank you so much, man. This has been, a bunch of, knowledge bombs, some great golden nuggets in this one. Gary, if people want to find out more, they should use my affiliate link, number one. But if people want to find out more about you and, follow the company, get more news, what's the best way to proceed with that?
Yeah, thanks, Gustavo. So our website is prospectboss.com. And my email, if you guys have any questions about all that stuff we were talking about, stir, shake, and spam likely, 10 DLC, my email is gary@prospectboss.com. And you guys can just reach out then. Our 800 number is 800-662-4009. And do use Gustavo's link below.
All right. Awesome. Gary, appreciate you, man. Would love to have you back in the group when we've got some more stuff to talk about in this space, because it is a moving target. Right? You got to be adapting, and the companies that do it in the best way, the fastest way, and provide a lot of value, I think you're going to win in this space. So, Gary, thanks so much for jumping on.
Thank you, Gustavo.